till the very end.
Sounds good. Do you need any help with like chat moderating, or can you look for
Maybe.
questions? Okay.
I'll do my best to have it all up. But if I get chatting and I miss something, or just like raise your hand, like this hopefully is pretty casual, or we got a pretty good sized group, which is great. I know sometimes with bigger groups it's a little harder, but all right. Well, since we're right up on time, do you want to kick us off at all, Allie, or do you want me to just jump right
Sure.
in?
No, I can sure introduce you. So yeah, we're 2:30. We can get started. We have Steve Kirsch here from QLI. He's going to talk about the Telerehab program that they offer there. It's outpatient. Telerehab is where they can do everything virtually, so they don't have to go, into the physical clinic. So he's going to go over that program, and he is up for taking questions or going different directions, QLI, whatever. So that's all I got. Steve, take it away.
Perfect. No, that's great. Well, thanks again for having me. I know this is like series two of several that we have planned because I think Kristen Custer was in town a few weeks ago. So I just really appreciate you all taking time out of your day. Just quick introduction. I work on our work comp marketing team, but I'm also a physical therapist by training. And so I've treated here at QLI for many years and now oversee our telerehab program. So I'll be coming at this more not only from a clinical perspective, but also just understanding work comp and really, like Ali said, if there's questions on like the real nuts and bolts of how to make decisions, challenges that you faced with telerehab in the past, skepticism that you have with telerehab, I love that discussion too, depending on who you are and kind of how you see the world. There's definitely some downsides to telerehab. So I'm also not here to paint this like rosy picture and say it's perfect for everyone. So would love just dialogue around any of that. Happy to do that. I do have a PowerPoint. It's more of just kind of to keep me on track. There's a little bit of intro of QLI, assuming most of you all kind of know who we are. So I'm not going to spend a ton of time. I still have people coming in, so I'm trying to let people in and do this. So I'm gonna share my screen and we can jump right into this.
Got my popcorn.
If everyone could just make sure you're muted too, please. Other than Steve.
For whatever reason, it's gonna ask me to sign in here. I still have people coming in, so hold on. Okay. Can everyone see the slideshow? Good on that end?
Looks good.
Okay. So just real quick, our telerehab service. Our telerehab services are an extension of QLI, but if you know QLI, we are based in Omaha, Nebraska. This is a picture of our campus. Many people who have been to QLI, one of the first things they say is, wow, it's way bigger than I thought it was. So we sit on about 60 acres. You all are probably most familiar with this part of our campus, and it's our active rehab campus. We got 6 houses. This is our main therapy operations building, and about 60 beds where people who are at the post-acute level of care, this is where they are housed and where they stay. up on top of the hill here is our long-term care and assisted living. So that's we have kind of a small continuum within QLI, which I'm going to get to here in just a minute. So this is just kind of to anchor you. This has been our bread and butter for over 30 years now. And this is kind of like the main aspect of our rehab program. With all that being said, we have added within the last 6 years a level of care at the community-based portion of someone's recovery. So Ali mentioned we have our Telerehab program, which is our primary focus for today. It sits after the post-acute level of care, which is where our QLI inpatient active intense rehab program sits. And again, this is the one that's been around the longest. This was birthed for a few reasons. We transition individuals and admit individuals to nearly all 50 states. And so a big piece of our rehab program is making sure that they enter into QLI well, but just as importantly, if not more, exit QLI well. And prior to Telerehab, we would really depend on our team members to make those transitions go well, be it hopping on a plane, hopping in a car, and traveling with those individuals who are leaving our program to make sure that they re-enter back into the community. About 85% of the folks who come through QLI go back home or to a community-based setting. So Telerehab was actually built, one, to support those efforts. And QLI, our inpatient program, still does a lot of that transition, but our Telerehab services are an adjunct to that quite frequently. There's also a group of people who don't make it to QLI for whatever reason. Either they don't want to leave their home or community and have access to a post-acute program or an outpatient program near them, or they don't meet our admissions criteria. And so our Telerehab services allow us to serve those individuals virtually. And so if you're not familiar with Telerehab, it's basically using Zoom and delivering our care via Zoom primarily. And then there's some kind of outlier type of situations, which I will highlight. So that's the primary mode of how we're delivering care. So again, just talking about Telerehab at this point, the diagnoses that we serve are the exact same diagnoses that we serve in our inpatient post-acute program. The majority of the folks that we're seeing are have suffered some sort of brain injury. I will also throw concussion into this or post-concussive syndrome into this. So I don't know how you all are classifying that type of diagnosis. Some of our carriers are saying it's a catastrophic injury and it's captured underneath a catastrophic umbrella. We have other carriers who are not categorizing it as such, and it doesn't always hit that catastrophic level. So depending on how you guys are, that is very much a population that we're seeing on the Telerehab side. It's actually a really great population to be seen because we don't have to pull them out of their environment, and it's a very contextual way to work with them. And we'll go into that a little bit more too. Spinal cord injury, we see we do have we have a larger limb loss program, which we're going to talk about at a later date with you all. But right now we have 2 people in our Telerehab system who have upper extremity limb loss as their primary diagnosis. And then we've had some basic and complex orthopedic injuries. So we end up getting those through partners like you who say, hey, I know you can do the brain injury stuff, but I got a guy with a rotator cuff issue, or it's a dual diagnosis. So I'm working with someone right now who's pretty high functioning following a brain injury, but he's trying to get back to work and he had a clavicle fracture. So we're doing some shoulder rehab. So there's lots of different ways that you can access these services. The services that we offer are PT, OT, speech, psychology / counseling. These can be used all together, right? So you might say, hey, Steve, I have a referral. I need all disciplines. Totally fine. That's actually probably what we would prefer depending on the situation. But some of our payers need 1, 2, or any sort of combination. So this isn't an all or nothing type approach. So we do our best to match whatever the needs are of the person who's reaching out. The one thing I will also say about this, though, is I want you to keep in mind that we still basically apply our interdisciplinary approach. Most of our clinicians, all but one, worked on our inpatient program. So we're coming at this from a very interdisciplinary approach. We've all kind of grown up underneath the QLI umbrella. And so therefore, we've kind of adapted everything that we've learned and done as clinicians here at QLI with a brick and mortar setting to call it a virtual clinic, and we implement this interdisciplinary model. So I have physicians underneath here, and that's we don't have physicians, but we work really closely with physicians. So that's the only thing that's maybe a little bit unclear as this sits. But these individuals are all employed by us in terms of PT, OT, speech, and psychology. And we also have internal service coordination that kind of helps round this out and is a point of contact for you. And then you get this kind of interdisciplinary approach that isn't often seen at the outpatient level. So it's a huge differentiator. It's one of the biggest things that I think makes our program successful, aside from the fact that it's contextual and done in the person's environment. So that's kind of like the diagnoses that we serve and who's on our team. Before we get into some additional nuts and bolts, I want to talk through some concepts that drive a lot of our decision making and hopefully help you with some of your decision making. One of the biggest questions I get is who's a good referral? What type of person should I be thinking of for telerehab? It's not a really straightforward answer. So what we've tried to do is give you some just mental models, so to speak, to be thinking about. If you're super familiar with this population, it might seem pretty remedial. At the same time, it's pretty gray often in terms of the decision making. So before we do that, if you all, hopefully, if you're not on your phone, you can use your phone to scan this QR code. If you are, or if you're on your computer, you can go to menti.com and just insert this code. But I would love to see how people are choosing their preferred therapy option. So I'll go ahead and start this. And if you could list just a word or some sort of descriptor as to why you would choose telerehab. And hopefully it's not too complicated on your end. And you can submit them one at a time. It's going to give you the option to hit 3, but if you only just have one, you can go ahead and submit it. Once you all submit, we should get some responses rolling through real time for you. Ali, you're the only one I see. Is it working on your end or is it not?
Yep, it's working. I'm the only one putting in answers.
It's not even showing up on my side.
I did enter a couple.
Did you? Okay. Yeah,
I answered
Oh.
3.
I
So
did
it's
too.
not, for whatever reason, it's not.
I did 3 as well.
Okay. Do you want us to put it
Oh,
in
here
the
we
chat?
go. Here we
Oh.
go. They all kind of took a minute to populate. Thank you. Okay, sorry for the delay. Okay, so convenience. So the way these word clouds work, the bigger the word, the more that it was entered in and voted for, so to speak. So rural, location, convenience, easy access, easy. So candidly, I'm not surprised. That's why most people initially pick up the phone to call us, which are they're all great reasons. And so I think hopefully you can take what you see here, and as we go through this, I would love to have some dialogue at the end to see if you still feel the same, or if we open and crack the door a little bit for you to think of telerehab a bit differently along the way. Let's see here. I got another one for you. So if you don't choose telerehab, what are the reasons that you're not choosing it? Right. So if you go to a brick and mortar clinic, or call it even home health, anything other than telerehab, what are your reasons for choosing it? And then someone can just give me some feedback that you're entering. I'm not sure why I was slow to populate.
People are submitting, they say.
Okay. Oh, I know what it was. Oh.
Mine keeps coming back up to the why you choose telerehab, so.
Is it going to the wrong one?
Yeah, mine is, but I'll just see what everybody else.
It is.
Oh, yeah.
Just answer, if you could just answer it again. And maybe it's just delayed for some reason. But while we're waiting, maybe just throw out a couple examples of what would make you choose it, if anyone's willing to do so.
Compliance. Yeah.
Say that again.
Compliance, Chelsea said, compliance.
Okay. Compliance.
I think I put hands-on,
Okay.
equipment,
Okay. Good.
family support, technology
Yep.
barrier, someone said.
Is it showing up on your end, Ellie?
No, I'm just reading the chat for you.
Oh, you're just reading chat. Got it.
Cost.
Okay. Good. So I'll say all of those are examples of things we see. The other one that I hear a lot is I want the person to get out into the community, right? So I think there's this perception that telerehab only happens in the home. And we're going to talk about a lot of reasons why that does happen and other reasons that it doesn't. So back to our initial kind of poll, convenience is typically the first reason that people are telling us, like, hey, I need you because this person lives 30 minutes, hour away from anything, or has limited access to transportation. One of the things that we are seeing a lot with the post-concussive population is they can't tolerate riding, right? So they can avoid a car ride by doing it. And it's really easy to schedule around activities, whether it's this person's at work or they're at home and the caregiver is not available, all the things related to convenience. The other reason that is pretty front and center on our end in terms of feedback is there isn't access to a provider. It probably rolls back up underneath this location situation. But there are situations where it's like I have a provider right down the road, but they don't understand brain injury or they don't understand limb loss. And I want someone who deals with this all the time. So expertise, specialty care is a way, this is a way to access that. We do have some patients who prefer it actually because of the convenience. It again rolls back up into convenience. Other things I would like you to consider when you're thinking about telerehab versus another type of therapy, be it post-acute or even just if you're bumping it up against another outpatient option. I like to think about this in terms of what is the therapeutic intensity that's needed, as well as what's the structure and support that is needed. If structure and support needed is really, really high, telerehab is potentially a difficult option because we depend on having a caregiver or a caregiver who's capable of helping these individuals. Or if it's a heavy cognitive load, the person's pretty cognitively impaired, sometimes it's just really hard to get telerehab up and going. These are some just other factors to consider, right? As we know, when support system is low, any sort of therapy is tough, but it can be a bit challenging when that support system isn't even able to like help them get signed on or set the table for them to get signed on. And so we are always thinking of rehab potential in terms of time, complexity of injury. What are the outcome goals? I think those are other considerations, as well as the social emotional factors and a few other things. So just kind of food for thought as we're looking at how to make some of these decisions. The other thing I would say is remember, telerehab is towards the end of the continuum. The nice thing about being at the end is we can typically predict what the outcome will be. And so a lot of times people are calling us and saying, we're not sure if this person needs telerehab. Can you talk us through what we do with this person? Or what do you think you can do with this person? The nice thing about where we sit is we can give you a pretty good idea of what is probably possible, assuming compliance is high and assuming there's like a level of support and things like that in place. So that is the benefit of being this late in the continuum. The other thing that I've noticed, I've screwed this up many times as a therapist at the post-acute level. We have a lot of people who leave that look, quote unquote, really good from the post-acute level of care, and they get home and life happens and it's just not as good as what we think. And so we get the value of seeing how well we did on the post-acute level of care, assuming they came through our program. And then we can either pick up the pieces or take things to the next level at this level. And then also just remembering that the level of support is just different. There's not a bunch of providers like there is at the post-acute level. We are really just an outpatient virtual clinic, and we only have so much we can do, and we just have to take that into account. This is a really important concept that we think about, and I have a couple examples as to that reinforce this. But we typically think about our therapeutic intensity or the amount of therapy someone gets or the amount of support they might get as something that should be inversely related to their life trajectory. So I'll just use an example of someone. This blue line is the person's life. So I have a lady who I'm working with. She just went back to work. She's really high functioning. And I would expect her to be fully independent, discharged from our services. That being said, she went back to work. She went from 0 hours of work to 40 hours of work. It wasn't our recommendation, but that's just how the cards landed. And so I would say her life trajectory is trending downward. She's not working out and doing her home program. She's a bit more confused and needs a little bit more support. She's tired and fatigued, not only physically, but mentally and cognitively. As a result, we knew that she was going back to work, and we did not discharge her prior. And instead, I check in with her about 15 minutes every week or every other week. And so my therapeutic intensity is matching her needs because her needs are a bit higher just because she went back to work. And then I would expect that we kind of get her up out of that back to baseline, and I can drop my therapeutic intensity, hopefully forever. But that doesn't always happen. And so again, at this like later end of the continuum, we see people's life trajectory change. And I would encourage you all to think about what does the therapeutic support or intensity look like as a result. And so we talk a lot about this. And so we're really careful about when we prescribe, number of visits, frequency, duration, things like that. It's not the cookie cutter, hey, 2 times a week, 3 times a week. It might start that way, but I also have somebody else who I see 5 days a week for 15 or 30 minutes. And I'm going to scale that up and scale that down based on their needs because we're dealing with a complex population. So we take a pretty practical approach, and that's something that we would work with you all on if you sent us the referral, right? I know even with you, we go through the authorization process. So that's a little bit something different that happens. But that might be an outlier when you see that coming through. Like, why does Steve need to see this person 5 days a week? Well, I still might be only seeing them for 2 or 3 hours. I might just be spacing it out so I can provide a different level or frequency of support. So this concept is really, really important to think about. Okay, any questions about kind of like the initial perceptions of telerehab, as well as the concepts around where we're at in the continuum and how we make some initial decisions? Any questions? Okay. Put them in the chat, and then Allie and I are both kind of monitoring that if you have some. Okay, some other considerations. One of the biggest reasons that I think telerehab is actually superior than in-person or brick and mortar clinic type of therapy is that we see these individuals in their environment. It could be their home, it could be their community, wherever they go in the community, it could be work. Someone can look really, really good in the clinic and they're falling apart at home, or they look really, really good in the clinic and you have no idea what's going on at home. And there's a lot of other scenarios with that. So the value of what we do is we see them in their home. Let's just say they do their fitness center or home exercise program at their gym. They take us to the gym on their iPad or on their phone. If they're going back to work, we have a gentleman in Indianapolis. He actually has to take the bus to work. So the first time he took the bus to work, our speech therapist was with him on the bus so that we could wayfind with him. He didn't know how to get there. And so we were there supporting him along the way. So it's this like side-by-side companion no matter what we're doing. And then as a clinician, I can see exactly what the challenges are rather than just making some guesses about what it is. The other thing that we spend a lot of time with, especially with our individuals with head injuries, is helping them understand and plan for their day. It could be someone who's going back to work and saying, when are you going to work out? When are you going to do your recovery time? How are you going to pace your day and build that out? Or it could be someone who's lower level, who's not even working. And it's like, what are you doing throughout your day in your home? And how are you getting out into the community, if at all? And so we're working on purpose of day. What do you have to look forward to? What's your daily schedule look like? How do we train your caregivers so that they can support you if they're willing? So those are all aspects that we can do real time with these individuals. The other thing I would also say is there's plenty of times where I'll have a client text me or call our clinic and say, hey, can I quickly get on your schedule tomorrow? Because I have this thing coming up that I want to process with you. And so we're pretty real time about how we do our scheduling, because we know that these individuals don't always have a good like foresight of what they're going to run into each week. We also are pretty practical around not everything can be done in person. So there have been situations where we're seeing these individuals fully virtually, and we get to a point in their care where we need to see them in person. And so I don't think we've done this with you, but we've had other carriers approve like 1, 2, 3-day trips where we go see the person in their home or in their community, because it gives us a better glimpse of what's going on. Come back, we adjust the treatment plan, and we're back to virtual if needed. We also do some consultation with other providers. So there might be a boots on the ground provider in your area who either is a really great provider and they don't understand brain injury and we can support them, or they do need hands-on for whatever reason, but we're also tackling all the contextual stuff that's happening in the home. And so we kind of work together in parallel or hopefully cross over and support each other in that regard. So we've done all of those sorts of things as well. Just to give you an idea of what we can handle. So we've talked about the diagnosis. As you know, with those diagnoses, there's a whole host of challenges that can arise. So on the physical side, we navigate musculoskeletal deficits, anywhere from chronic pain to just simple like neck, back pain, mobility, strengthening. We have some folks who just need endurance training and just a fitness routine. So we will see them, get them up and running on the fitness routine and give them apps to follow and just monitor that with some of our other disciplines or with the PT. The vestibular function and balance is typically something that pops up with our post-concussive population. So we are able to treat all of those things virtually. So for example, we're helping individuals do a self-EPLI to monitor any vestibular function issues that might be popping up. Our OT is going to be the one that navigates any ADLs or IADLs and vision deficits. Our OTs are also pretty versatile in terms of handling cognitive deficits and planning and organization. So they'll take on some of the cognitive stuff, especially if an SLP isn't really needed for the person that we're working with. Psychology wise, emotional well-being, social relationships, and social skills. Our team collectively is typically handling that. I already mentioned the purposeful activity. Return to work is a huge piece of what we do, given where we're seeing folks along the way. All right. So just to kind of highlight how we are making decisions, we do a combination of formal and functional, not only therapy, but assessment. So we do our best to do objective measures. Some of them are adapted to be done virtually, and others are just creative things that we've done. So using time, using apps that we have found to provide more objective measures. So there's lots of ways that we do this. It's pretty dependent on the person and what their goals are. But then we're also integrating this into a functional approach. And so what we know about therapy is that there's a time and a place for formal therapy. Show up to a clinic or meet with your provider and do 30 to 60 minutes and do formal repetitions. What we also know is we miss a ton of repetitions and a ton of training outside of formal therapy. So we're spending a lot of time with them or with their caregiver to make sure that there's therapy going on throughout their day, which bumps up the number of repetitions and we hope improves the outcome. I also mentioned our service coordination and oversight. We have a dedicated team, really two people essentially, to do administrative things. One, to help with scheduling and referral flow and things like that. But if you've worked with QLI's inpatient program, we also have internal service coordination, much like our inpatient team does. They're kind of the quarterback of the client's program. So if you have a question and you need to call someone, that's your person, unless you want to call our clinicians. Our clinicians are super accessible too. So I get texts or calls from case managers all the time, like, hey, can I connect with you on something? So you can always reach directly out to our clinicians, but we also have that service coordination to kind of keep things on track, make sure you guys are feeling in the loop. If you aren't in the loop, call them up, we'll get you on track, that sort of thing. So back to kind of the differentiator around the interdisciplinary approach, our internal service coordination is a huge piece of that, which really I think provides you all just hopefully great customer service along the way. In terms of collaboration, we regularly meet on our folks at least once a week, sometimes more. So we have scheduled meetings, call it like a rounds, so to speak, where we're saying, hey, if I like, let's just say I'm the client, our team's saying, hey, how's Steve doing? What do we need to bump up? What do we need to change? Anything we need to address? Any challenges that are arising? As a team, we are kind of doing that internally as part of the flow of our day. We also offer regular meetings with case managers, adjusters, folks like you as needed. Typically, those are every 30 days, give or take, or we're just updating you on the fly and saying, hey, Allie, just want to give you a heads up on Steve. Here's a quick update. Let me know if you have any questions, or you can always call us. So there's this combination of organic collaboration as well as a formal level of collaboration if needed. That also happens on the front end. So if you send us a referral, we're going to say, all right, great, Allie, thanks for the referral. What disciplines are you thinking? What are the outcome goals? Is this person returning to work? What are the challenges? Like, we're doing that inventory together. And then as we build out that plan of care, we're coming back and saying, hey, does this match your goals? Is this where you want to head? And are we on the same page with that? So that happens at various points along the way. And so then that leads into just the practical therapy duration and frequency, which I mentioned. So don't be surprised if you're working with us and you see something that's maybe a little bit more fluid or just doesn't look like traditional outpatient therapy where you see 3 days a week, 30 minutes. Yes, we do that, but we also do some other creative things because that's what the person needs. And then you should just expect clear and measurable goals, just like you would get from any other outpatient clinic. We always say people, if they're going to use Telerehab, it has to feel just as good, if not better, than outpatient, right? It has to have measurable goals, has to be objective, has to have good outcomes. We also are known to send equipment if needed. So I sent some TheraBands the other day. We sent somebody a blood pressure cuff the other day. Actually, it was one of your guys that we work with. We just sent him a blood pressure cuff because I'm like, as the clinician, I know he's having high blood pressure, and I need to check that when I'm with him. And so because we're just moving quickly. We do lots of things like that. Again, the thought process is if they would get it in the clinic, we should provide it virtually. That's generally how we use our decision making with that. Not always the case. If it's a higher dollar item, we might say, hey, an example would be an Apple Watch or some sort of wearable. Hey, we want to track this person's activity. Would you guys cover this, or do we need to pass that cost along to the patient? But those are pretty common points of discussion along the way. Okay, so we're kind of getting to how to make a referral. Before we jump into that, any questions on like, how do I know when to call you? Who's the right person? Rebuttals on quality of care, any sort of discussion that makes sense with that? Y'all are easy.
So Claire is that's who we would reach out to first. Is this Claire?
Yeah,
Email
or me.
address?
Or me, but Claire is gonna be the one. Actually, I'm realizing I put her email. She has two different emails. I'm gonna put her. I'll update this and I'll send you guys this. But her email is incorrect here. But Claire is gonna be like the direct, like, hey, I have a referral. Can I talk to you about it? And it happens a couple different ways. I for sure have a referral, and it's these three disciplines. I know what I need. We also have scenarios where it's, hey, Claire, I think I have a referral. I think I need these disciplines, but can I talk to you about it? And and then with the discussion, Claire will say, sure, let's go ahead and get those three disciplines scheduled. Or we'll say, hey, why don't they meet with a clinician or two? Let's do a quick screen. We don't charge for them. And let's decide and let's get the physicians in or the clinicians input on this so that we can give you some feedback on, can we provide value and do we think it'll be helpful? So we kind of do that a bit more fluidly too. And so the more that you work with us, like you'll kind of get a feel for what's needed. But if you don't know, like we want you to call us and we can process through that. Like that's some of our job too. But
And
yes,
that conversation could come before meeting with the provider to say, do you think this might be a good recommendation, and getting that order after? Like maybe, if we're not sure, we can reach out to you first.
Yep, that's what I would do. If you're not sure, you're going to reach out to Claire or me. And Claire's really good about understanding, asking questions, understanding what's needed, what are the red flags that sometimes pop up. She's worked really closely with our clinicians and understood kind of like the pros and the cons, and we'll be able to make a pretty good recommendation to you on like, yeah, I think we can help this person. I think tele is a good idea. Or, hey, this person might be better for, call it outpatient, like brick and mortar. We've even made some recommendations to our inpatient program. We might even say like, gosh, this person seems to need way more support than we can provide in this scenario. We'd recommend you go to the post-acute level. On the flip side, we get referrals from our post-acute team too. Same thing. We have a guy that's from North Dakota that we're working. He's one of your people. You referred him to our inpatient program, and our inpatient program denied him. And so we are working with him to say, okay, what can we do? One of our goals with him actually is to potentially make him a better candidate for post-acute rehab. And so like we're looking at different ways that we can work together, because I actually do think he would benefit from a post-acute program. We just got to make him meet that criteria for our admissions team, because there are some question marks on compliance, anger, things like that that sometimes preclude us from saying yes on the inpatient side. So it's kind of fluid back and forth in that way too. And then I guess just to highlight that one more time, if you happen to send the referral to our inpatient program and it actually makes more sense for tele, that's fine. They'll send it to us. Like we talk enough that there's some back and forth, and if there's a question mark, they'll reach out to us. So worst case scenario, if you send it post acute and it needs to be tele or vice versa, we can pivot as needed. So this is generally the very bare minimum that Claire is going to ask for. But a lot of times she's taking notes and saying, what's family situation like? What can you send us the medical records? Anything we need to know on those? Like we're digging in and getting as much information as we can. Any other questions on process, telerehab, how it works? That's like all the actual information I have. I'll leave it up to you. We can wrap early. I also have some videos prepared that I could show you how we do some sessions and talk through like the thought process and what we're working on, if you all are interested and feel like that would be a good use of time, or if you want the 15 minutes to kind of get back to work today, like that's totally cool with me too. So maybe some feedback on that would be helpful.
I think the videos would be great. I wonder if there isn't any other questions out there. Like I know we had a group that met earlier this week to talk about our process of who's going to review for the, like you mentioned, Steve, that we do review for medical necessity on therapy in general. And we kind of lumped this program into that. So it would be reviewed, based on medical necessity. We have the initial window for, 10 visits or whatever for PT, OT, and then speech is separate. And then, the psychology stuff, that would all need to be a claims adjuster approval. So I don't know if anybody out there had questions on that or. Maybe not. I mean, we could, as these referrals are made and we start, seeing maybe more referrals to the telerehab program with you all now that we're more familiar with it. I mean, we can kind of troubleshoot things as they come too.
Yeah, I mean, and even I don't know how you are gathering potential claims that would be useful for like to have us, or maybe they're your tougher claims that you don't know quite what to do with. Like we're happy to, even if you had a list of those and kind of talk through them, almost a round table to just help with decision making. Like I think we're always trying to figure out what are your challenges and who are the people that you think you should send. And I bet there's a group of people that you don't think you should that we can actually help. And so like I don't know the best way to work with you on that, but just to put it out there, like we're willing to engage in some like deeper discussion and some nuts and bolts contextual discussion around, hey, we have this client with this injury. What do you think? And even if it doesn't come to us as a referral, that is really great time spent for us because we get to build a relationship with you. We get to understand your problems and hopefully you understand what we can and can't do a little bit better. And ultimately that benefits you and the injured worker. And so if that's of value to you, you just have to ask and let us know how we can be helpful.
Yeah, awesome. Well, if anybody listening, I mean, wants to ever, discuss whether or not an injured employee might be a good candidate for this, and they don't necessarily want to reach out to Steve themselves personally until they talk it over a little bit more internally, like I'm happy to kind of collect those names and we could maybe review together and then reach out to him together. Or yeah, I'm sure that there are people out there that we could be sending your way that you'd help for sure.
Great. Well, why don't I show you a few videos and I'll just kind of talk through them. If this is valuable, great. If you're like, hey, seen enough, let me know. But let me see if I can. I hope this works. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Optimize for video. And then let's see.
Ground overhead.
Can you see it playing?
Yep.
Okay. So just to set this up, this gentleman obviously lives on a farm. He's working with Brad, our physical therapist, and these are seed bags. You can actually see the weights down in the bottom right-hand corner. Instead of using weights, Brad has actually had him fill seed bags to different weights because he has to lift these seed bags off of shelves, in and out of trucks, whatever else he needs to do with seed bags. And so this becomes a really functional way to train him. So I'll just play the video real quick. I'm going to turn sound off. But you can see what he's basically talking him through is some body mechanics, working on shoulder strengthening, working on can he bend over, all so that he can do this throughout his day and function as a farmer. The other thing that happened with this is he was seeing our speech therapist, I believe actually, and our OT, but they were also working with him on some cognitive aspects of his program. So he had to plan how much seed am I going to use for this area of my farm. And so there's some cognitive tasks that are tied into that. He's a businessman, so we have to help him make sure he's running a solid business. And so I'm only showing you the physical aspects of this, but when it comes to measuring out seed, filling the bags, and then utilizing it, that's how we're kind of tying all of this together into something that I would call functional therapy, right? And so the formal therapy would be using those weights and saying, hey, let's do 3 sets of 10, just using the weights. The functional application is, can you actually carry those seed bags 20 feet from the shelf to the truck of the bed of your truck, right? So those are the kind of things that we start to think about when we start to build someone's program. And so it's like, hey, what are the things that you run into each day that you need to do, and how do we make our therapy around that? Let me see if I can find another one here. This is a gentleman, making sure you guys still see that, correct?
Yep.
Okay, so this is a gentleman that also lives on a farm. This is there's a couple ways that we look at this too. So the task is going to be getting on and off of the horse, which you can obviously see the physical challenges related to that, the safety related to that. What you don't see is there's a caregiver behind the scene of the camera. So this isn't just done aimlessly, but the cognitive aspect of this one was, can he check and put on the saddle so it's safe? Right? Making sure that each part of the saddle is connected. Is the saddle going to wiggle around, or is it stable the way that it should be? And then they literally went through repetitions of him getting on and off the horse. You can see there's one of the caregivers, and ways to process through it.
Hey, that was a nice one.
And so Brad's kind of coaching him in the background, which you may or may not be able to hear. So this was one aspect of his therapy session. Let's see here. Swimming, I'm going to skip this one for now, but this gentleman had a swimming pool. So pretty obvious opportunity to use the environment in the home. Not all of our people have swimming pools. So this is honestly like best case scenario. Doesn't always happen, but we would do workouts in the swimming pool and utilize that within his environment. This is a cooking scenario. This gentleman has left hand and arm weakness, hemiparesis. And so our OT is taking him through a cooking routine. So they're baking cookies. Leading up to this, he did all the planning for the recipe. He figured out what was needed, actually did the grocery shopping, the budgeting, and all the cognitive aspects of it, as well as the physical aspects of accessing it within the grocery store. We accompanied him to all of that. And then you can see our clinician is cueing him to utilize the left hand throughout the process. He wouldn't initiate that on his own. And so a lot of the functional stuff that we were encouraging him to do outside of therapy were things that would incorporate left hand. So this just happened to be the activity for the day. But then we're starting to take an inventory of what else could you do throughout your day to make sure that we're challenging you cognitively and physically and doing it appropriately.
So it's doing really good. So.
All right, this gentleman is a carpenter, and Brad has him working on some balance activities. But part of the role as a carpenter is he's having to carry and pick up wood planks, has to cut them to size. And so they incorporated all of that into making kind of a balance related obstacle course. So you can see he's stacking the 2x4s there, and it's in a 4-quadrant area. And so Brad's going to have him step up and over these in order to challenge his balance. Apparently Brad didn't work on safety because he doesn't have any shoes on. But this is something that they worked on, and then it was meaningful to him. So you can see this is the workout that they ended up coming up with. This one is a typing scenario. This would be an example of a more outside the box objective measure. We were working with this gentleman on typing. He had some right hand weakness, but then we used a program that allowed us to test how many words per minute he could type. And so he was going back to a job that required fast typing. And so this was an objective measure that we would use to justify ongoing care and progress, right? So if he was able to type 20 words per minute today and 30 minutes per words per minute 2 weeks from now, then we can show some actual progress. So that's just one example of a way that we would show progress with an individual like this. Let's see. Last one I'll show you. So this is Waylon. Waylon is a gentleman. This is more of a cognitive task, but this is his daughter. And so Waylon struggled socially. He struggled with decision making. He struggled with safety. And so we were trying to figure out, can he spend time alone with his daughter, or can he spend time unsupervised with his daughter? Like, let's just say his girlfriend was in the other room. And so we were working with Waylon on, like, what are you going to do with her? Let's plan some activities. What happens if she's not listening to you? Can you get down and interact with her well? So a really functional and motivating task for Waylon. And what we found is Waylon got discharged from pretty much every other therapy that he had that was brick and mortar because they ran out of things to work with him on. Versus when we come in, we're utilizing all aspects of his world, and there's actually a ton of therapy that could be done.
Are you tired yet?
So this is just another example of how we're using kind of real world stuff to build out all of our therapy.
Absolutely. I thought you did a good job of getting the knees up and really getting up over those. I mean, you.
All right. Any questions or thoughts on that?
I don't see any in the chat anyway.
Okay. Well, with that, I'll let you all have the rest of your day, or a little bit of your time back. Allie, I'll send you the recording. I'll send you the PowerPoint with the updated information. And then just let me know if there's any follow-up that is needed.
Okay, we'll definitely do that. Thank you. You're getting lots of compliments in the chat. It was really great information, very relevant to us. And I liked it's almost like a work hardening kind of thing that you guys are incorporating into the session. So that's pretty cool to see too. So thank you so much. And just so everybody knows to keep an eye out for your schedule, it looks like we're gonna maybe book some more sessions with Steve on a couple of the other programs offered with QLI, such as like the pain program, limb loss program, or a couple that we were looking at having you come back for. So
yep, I'll follow up with you on that. I think we had October, November for those. So I have that on my list, and I'll close the loop with you there too.
awesome. Thank you so much.
All right, you're welcome.
Bye.